Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Capes of Lunatics. It's me, Phil. No Lilith, but we got Tyler, we got Will, and of course, another special guest. If you've read a comic book anytime in your life, you probably heard of this man, Mr. Mark Waid. Hello, sir.
Please keep your seats, please. Hey.
All right. So, yes, we're here to talk about a lot of things. I know all of us, I believe the three of us here have read World's Finest. I know we talked when the first issue came out. I mean, 30 issues in, sir, you haven't lost a step on that book. So
Thanks. Well, I mean, come in. Dan Moore has been my secret weapon, right? I mean, he's just amazing at making even the, most forgotten DC heroes and villains of yesteryear make them look like they're modern today.
Yes.
His art has been just amazing.
Wait do you see what he's doing on Justice League? Oh my God.
Oh.
Does he sleep? I mean,
do you sleep? Because you two, it seems like when Mark Waid gets announced for a project, I know who the artist is going to be anymore. Dan Moore.
Yeah, he can do 2 pages a day. He can probably do 3 pages a day if he pushes, which is crazy. Yeah.
At that quality, that is just insane.
That's the thing. I say this to all my artist friends, and they all hate him. They all hate him. He's universally loathed in the comics artistic community just for that.
And I know when Lilith and I were talking about it the other day, when we were reviewing World's Finest number 30, any chance this book could ever become a Trinity book? Because you did add Wonder Woman into the story. So
thanks. I mean, I don't know. I really like the Superman-Batman combo, Superman-Batman-Robin combo, I should say, because that's the secret sauce. I mean, we've done a lot of Batman-Superman team-up books over the last 20, 30 years, but making it clearly a Batman and Robin and Superman book, I think, really unlocked things for me because Dick just adds so much to the thing. He's the one who can tell jokes. He's the one who can sort of bounce around and make fun of the other two. It's just he's so much fun to write. Oh
yeah, and again, everyone raves about this book. I haven't heard one bad thing. Again,
thanks.
And then now we're in the middle of Absolute Power, which that's a huge thing. I mean, that's going through a lot of the books, and so how long was in the planning for Absolute Power? Because it seems like you were taking threads from like stuff like people were doing in their own books for a while. Like it's like fail safes in here. It's like, man,
Yeah. It's been in the works for over a year. I mean, I've been working on it in secret for maybe 6 months or so, maybe longer, and putting it together and coordinating with the other writers and artists because I wanted to give them plenty of heads up so that it didn't feel like we were suddenly dropping an imposition on them. In fact, in order to make it feel like a real serious event book where, rather than have tie-ins that are just like the C-level books, I wanted it to be Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, the main titles. Luckily, the writers of all three, Josh and Tom King and checks notes, Chip Zdarsky. All three of them were great about just saying, just give us an idea of what you need in these 3 issues, and we'll do it because we also wanted to make sure that those issues, as well as the Green Lantern issues, as well as the Green Arrow issues, as well as the Task Force 7 issues, everything was of a purpose. Everything brought something to the table. There, you can get a complete story by reading just the 4 issues, but you get a much enhanced story because there's a lot of fetch quests going on the side. There's a lot of character development happening there, and there's, like I said, it's all part of a puzzle. All those are vital pieces to the puzzles, and we work really hard to make sure it wasn't just like, somebody mentioned Absolute Power in a panel, let's put a banner on the cover to make you buy it. It wasn't that. We, everything contributes to the whole.
And would you say, I mean, I don't know if to me it seems like there's a shift, but is Amanda Waller a straight up villain now?
Not if you ask her.
No.
The cards I was dealt by the time I got to it after Beast World was Yeah. She's pretty much just finally crossed over all the lines. I've tried to bear in mind as I write her throughout that I don't want her twirling a mustache. I want her to have some depth. I want to make sure that there is real emotion and real reason for her to feel the way she feels. And John Ridley doing the side book with Amanda's Origins has been enormously helpful. That is a great book, and it is a great insight into how Amanda can morph from the Amanda that we have known to the Amanda that we have now.
Gotcha. So I think you probably have a really interesting perspective. Crossovers today versus crossovers, you've got Zero Hour from the
Right.
early 90s. I think, and my memory could be playing tricks on me because Phil tells me I'm getting old and senile,
Yeah.
but I think you edited Invasion or were involved with editing
Yeah,
Invasion.
I was the assistant editor on Invasion. Yeah. What a
So
nightmare that thing
you've got
was. Yeah.
yeah, you've got these crossovers from kind of the dawn of crossovers to
Yeah.
doing a modern one now. How have they kind of morphed and changed over the years?
The old way of doing it from Crisis on, because again, I wasn't working at DC at time with Crisis, but I was very much boots on the ground with the side projects, the guides and the compendiums and the issues of Amazing Heroes that just covered it back to front. I mean, at one point, George liked to say that I knew Crisis better than anyone, including Marv and George. So and then, working on Invasion, working on Zero Hour, working on my own Underworld Unleashed over the years. The biggest change is that they really used to be line wide and imposed, like mandatory. There was no opt out button. And as comics have become more creator friendly, if you will, or at least more creator driven over the last 10, 20, 25 years, that's DC in particular has been very good about approaching each book and each series like most of them like, look, we would love for you to play along. We think it's a bump in your sales. We think it's going to get you some attention, but if you're in the middle of something crucial, we don't want to mess that up. You know, that said, there are always going to be one or two books where you're like, we will do whatever we can to help you out, but we need some crossover action here or there. But it's more of an opt-in now than it was it was never an opt-out, and now it's more of an opt-in.
It's
Cool.
Yeah, there's no point. I mean, again, I've been on both sides of that table, right? And there's no point in forcing someone to take one or two or three issues of their own book to tell a story that they have no investment in, that they are not interested in, that didn't come from their heads. As craftspeople, they will probably be able to accomplish it, but it won't be great. It'll do the job, and that's about all you can hope for.
Gotcha.
I wanted to ask, last time I got to speak with you, Mark, was right before you launched the Batman Superman. How has it been just coming back to DC?
It's great. It's just great. This is my home. This is where I belong. It's been terrific. I mean, and DC, from Jim Lee on down, and Marie Javins, and my editors Paul Kaminsky and Andrew Marino, and all the people I've been working with have been great about just sort of throwing up in the doors and just saying, "Tell us what you want to do. Let's make that happen." And I'm very grateful for that. Most people don't get a career this long, and that is not a humble brag. That is more of a holy smokes. I don't know how that's possible, but I am not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm going to keep pushing to try to make myself better with every script, and I'm going to enjoy the ride while I can, because to be able to play in the DC sandbox, and especially with World's Finest, which is in continuity but set a few years back, I can do whatever I want to. I can have whatever guest stars I need to. I can play with whatever aspect of the DC universe I feel like playing.
Every book you've been putting out has just been amazing.
Thank you.
Right before you came on, you're welcome. We were talking about, I really enjoyed your, I guess, Shazam book with the captain and everything.
Yeah.
He's such an interesting character, because I feel like his lore is all over the place, and
Yeah.
I really like what you did with it. It was
Thanks. I think we nailed it down pretty good. The challenge of that book to me and it has always been the challenge, was if you are a kid who has the power to say a magic word and turn into a superhero, why would you ever change back? And that was a code I had to crack, and we finally cracked it by pointing out that he has the powers of these 6 gods, right? He's got the strength of Hercules, he's got the power of Zeus, he's got the speed of Mercury. He also has the wisdom of Solomon. And Solomon, if you look back at history, Solomon was not a super genius. He was just good about taking the practical way forward. So when he's the captain, the power of Solomon sort of gives him a clarity, and in terms of there's no panic, 6 things are happening at once, but I see how to deal with this. But when he's, but the downside when he's not in action and he's the captain, the wisdom of Solomon continues to whisper in his ear, saying things like, "Do your homework, eat your vegetables, get some sleep." And it just it's a slight thing. It's a little tiny back of the head whisper, but there's a point at which it just drives him crazy, and he's got to turn back to Billy, or else it'll just make him nuts. Yeah,
I love it because the term wisdom of Solomon gets used a lot at my house.
Yeah.
Because my 7-year-old's name is Solomon. So
Yeah.
he'll say stuff and he'll be like, wisdom of Solomon.
Wisdom of Solomon.
So like I pull that out. Like I was in the
Has
book.
he cut any babies in 2 yet?
No.
Okay.
Luckily we haven't got that far.
Right.
But like, he's he'll get my iPad and he'll start playing around the DC app now and start like reading stuff. And I was showing him the book because we also, my daughter who's 7, my son's 9, keep asking me questions like, because the different media, they're like Captain Marvel, Shazam, the captain. I'm like, it's the captain now, guys. Just go with it.
Right. Just go with it. It's the best we could do. It's the, legally it's the best we could do. Everything else is trademarked by somebody else. Even Captain Thunder is not ours to use at this moment. So, which would have been the best. To me, would have been probably the best alternative. But for the time being, it's the captain, and live with it. So
it just seems like a cool, like, it's like he has his name, but then he has his nickname. Like, guys, just call me the captain.
Because it's not. It's like Doctor Who, right? Doctor Who doesn't walk around calling himself Doctor Who. It's other people who call him the Doctor, the Doctor, and it's a little bit of a tip of the hat to that, but it's also the idea that it's just lunacy for his name to be his magic word.
Yeah,
because they try to duck and swerve around it in the last few years by saying, oh, well, he has to be concentrating when he says the word to change, and he can just say it any other way, or whatever it is. And I don't accept this. I find that it just takes on a meta sense, it just sort of takes the magic away from the word, right? It should be special. When he says that word, it should be a special moment. And letting him just say it, randomly throughout the day, I don't know. That just doesn't sit right with me.
Well, I think you really hit on something there too, because when you look at superheroes in general, there's that transformation scene, right? That where they go from the ordinary to the extraordinary, and that's there's a lot of magic in that, and I think you hit on it perfectly with that.
Thanks. Well, and again, Dan Mora, come on, again, my ace in the hole.
I thought I was going to say that book was a great run by some artist. I can't remember his name.
I know. although Emma Lupacino came on after him and she was the one I did the Teen Titans World's Finest book with, and she's phenomenal. I mean, she's really good. She's great at character stuff. She's really good at the smaller moments. I mean, again, another artist I would work with anytime, anywhere.
Oh yeah, that's another great book, that World's Finest Teen Titans. That was great.
I had a blast. DC's been really good about me just sitting down and going, okay, here are my dream projects. Silver Age Teen Titans, that's one. Batman, Superman, that's one. There's a couple more coming. So
with that formula, there's a couple more in that, like.
And that's sort of, I'm not sure they'll be branded World's Finest, but they'll certainly have that same feel to them in the sense
timeless feel.
I'm hoping
this is timeless. Yeah.
I have one that I'm hoping for. I don't want to say it because I don't want to jinx it.
What do you got? I mean, I can't tell you regardless, but
I thought he was going to say somebody else. Oh,
no. Here's the thing.
He did 90 years on the Flash.
Can't do it. Can't do it. It's Captain America's an outlier. I'll come back to that in a second.
Oh,
But I have found that it's just not good to go back to something that you did before.
Makes sense.
Because people don't compare you with your work. I mean, people who love it and love what you did before don't compare your new work to that work. They compare your new work to their memory of that old work. So you're fighting against your own sense of nostalgia, right? So it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, I will stand the 6 issues of Flash I did in the early 2000s against any of the stuff I did with Wally, or most of the stuff I did with Wally. But it just didn't get a great reception because it wasn't what people expected, and I wasn't doing karaoke. I wasn't playing the hits, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's just I've said pretty much everything I know to say about Wally. There's so many other characters in the DC universe I'd rather get a handle on. Captain America is an exception because I had the one I had 4 bites of that apple at least. I mean, I did the original run with Ron Garney, and then we were asked back, so that's run 2, and then Tom Brevoort offered me a chance to do the Man Out of Time miniseries, which was examining in a kind of a world's finest way, examining the early days of Cap out of the ice and answering some questions I had about that. And then I still wouldn't have gone back to Cap after that, but Chris Samnee and I finished Black Widow. He still had a few months on his contract. What else do you want to do? Chris wants to do Captain America. Well, I'm not going to be dumb enough to let somebody else work with Chris when I can. So,
Smart.
But
weren't you like a huge fan of Captain America even before you got into the business?
I really was. I was talking to Ralph Macchio this weekend at a convention in Connecticut, who was the editor who hired me back in the day. And I reminded him that I told him at the time, like, he left the answering machine message back. Kids' answering machines are like voicemail, but they're in a box. He left me a voicemail saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about a Marvel book." And then he didn't say which one. And I got home and I got the message, and I sat there and I told my then girlfriend, I said, "Look, unless it's Captain America, I'm not interested, but I do it for Cap." And sure enough, that was the book.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
I do have a question about a book. Can you offer any update on issue 2 of the Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor?
Yes, I know.
I love that first book so much.
It's my statement on Superman, and the whole thing is like as Birthright was my statement on the early days of Superman. This is my statement on modern Superman, and it kills me that DC put it on the schedule just too quickly. When you've got Brian Hitch, who by his own admission is not always the fastest guy in the room. Sometimes he is, but sometimes he's not. And Kevin Nolan, who is amazing but laborious, and that's you know that going in. Like, there's no faulting him for that. This is his process. So we put it on the schedule way too soon. And then there were a couple of things with this and that, little things, and then Brian finished about 6 months ago, I want to say. So that's done. Kevin, I think is finishing up issue 2, or has finished issue 2 and is diving into issue 3. I think that the idea at this point is to shoot for early next year and reprint the first one, just to remind people that it still exists who maybe didn't catch up with it, and sort of reissue the first one and then 2 and 3 in quick succession. So trust me, no one wants this book out there more than I do. I have, by the way, no idea why I keep zooming in and out. This is a StreamYard thing that I cannot seem to fix. So
I thought it's for dramatic effect.
I know. He was like, I want the book.
It is killing me. It just I'm getting seasick just looking at myself out of the corner of my eye. So but there's no adjustment here that I can make on the settings. So sorry, people. This is me in and out. Okay.
My good friend Anthony over at Digging for Kryptonite, we're both big fans of Birthright, and when this book came out, we were both like, oh, we got to talk about it when it gets finished. And then it kept getting delayed, and then I was like, you just want to talk about the one issue, because we were both like itching to talk about it.
And then he died of old age, and it's again, believe me, this is my magnum opus as far as Superman goes. This is all the toys in the Superman universe I want to play with, all in one story. And someday, you've already
sold me. You don't Don't have to keep going.
You know, I just hope that the giant delay doesn't cripple the book too bad. We'll see.
I mean, if we can put it all out next year, I mean, there's a little movie coming out that may help that, you know.
You don't say. This is true. Yeah.
Yes. I love him. He's like, I didn't think of that.
Boy, I've got a really good feel. I don't know any more inside baseball than you guys do, but I have a good feeling about this movie. I mean, I like James Gunn. I like his reverential approach by and large to this kind of stuff, and reverential without taking it too seriously. I mean, the movie has a dog in it, the superpowered dog with heat vision. So there's only so much, it ain't Zack Snyder.
No.
I was very happy that they filmed in Ohio.
Yeah, that was very cool.
That made me happy. So,
yeah.
I live in Ohio, so it was.
And he likes Superman, if you can tell.
Yeah, I just had this little
thing, just a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Well, kind of back to Absolute Power, but I'm guessing because since it was announced at Comic-Con that this is going to spin out into a new Justice League book that you're going to be writing. And Will and I do a Green Lantern podcast, and we were quite interested when we saw, at least in that first arc, that there's not going to be a Green Lantern, but there's going to be a Star Sapphire, Carol Ferris.
Exactly. We wanted to give her some play. I mean, it's we also wanted to mix up the core lineup a little bit to make sure that it wasn't just 7 or 8 guys and one lady. So that's some of it, but it's also she's an interesting character, and she gets us a lot of the power level that Green Lantern gets us, but a different look at how to use that power. In the first issue, she does things with a ring that Hal either has not or cannot do, and she has a specific advantage. That's part of the way the book rolls, though, is again, I'm moving in and out. I don't know. And okay. I swear to God, I'm trying to stay bone still, so I'm not, and nothing.
Extreme close up.
I know.
This man loves comics, kids. He can't stay still.
Dear StreamYard, fix this. It's a very mission-oriented book. I mean, it would, whether there had been a cartoon called Justice League Unlimited back in the day or not, which was awesome. But even if that hadn't existed, it would still be set up this way. It's everyone in the DC universe who wants to be a Justice League member and is a hero and, passes the basic, the basic qualifications. They're in the Justice League. So it is very much a 1 or 2 things happening every issue. And this mission's happening here and that mission's happening there. And they, assignments are based on who's best for the gig. Is this an aquatic mission? Then obviously Aquaman takes his crew in. Is it, is this something where, oh, look, Wonder Woman and Power Girl are the best people to take care of this? That's the whole idea.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the Green Lantern Flash, or not Green Lantern, Star Sapphire Flash, Black Lightning, core members that will appear more often than not in the book, but I don't want to also overcrowd it with a million superheroes. Because I want to be able to use, Blue Beetle. I want to be able to use, Zatanna or whoever as members going in and out. So the fun of it for me is being able to play with all these toys and get Dan a chance to, again, the zooming in and out.
You're fine. We're fine.
And give Dan a chance to draw everyone in the DC universe, because he's got that sort of George Perez itch about it, where he really, I ask him what he wants to draw, and he's like, anything I haven't drawn yet. So great.
And did I see in that first arc, I think a character who hasn't got a lot of play or a lot of good things in a while, Captain Atom.
Yeah, he's integral to what's coming up. Who else? I mean, that's one of the outliers, because again, he hasn't had a lot of screen time lately. He's in Jenny Sparks, but that's kind of an out of continuity book. So yeah, trust me, the list of it's a very deep, let's just say it's a very deep bench, because I love all these characters.
Nice.
It's exciting.
Thanks.
And
scene. Okay.
Yeah, and
I have another question, but I thought.
I wanted to read something real quick, if that's okay. Sure. My good friend
aloud,
Brian.
I hope, right? You're gonna read it aloud.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good. Okay. he found out we were chatting today, and he sent me this to say. He said, "Please tell him that the first comic I ever purchased as a kid was Flash 124, where Flash had just moved to Santa Marta after Keystone, and after Keystone had kicked him out, and I fell in love with Wally West right then and there. I immediately put all my allowance towards Flash comics and purchased Flash and Green Lantern, Brave and the Bold. Mark Waid became my dude."
Wow, that's really nice to hear. Tell him I said thank you, and tell him he makes me feel very, very old, but that's okay.
I will. He was watching, so, but
Cool.
he asked me to share that with you.
That's a very nice thing to say. I mean, it's just the nature of getting, of staying in the business this long, is more and more people are coming up to me going, your comics were the first ones I ever read, which is nice. And that's very flattering.
When my kids asked who I was talking with tonight, and I was telling them about your stuff, I pointed out, because I have the book we talk about, they know the imagery of Kingdom Come, and I was just like, the writer of this, and they were like, oh.
No,
like,
please. They're just currying favor.
My kids are smart. My kids
your kids are smart. They're sucking
the wisdom of Solomon. We get it.
I'm just, they pull out some stuff sometimes. I'm like, good job.
That's cool. I mean, it's hard to know what really young fans will respond to. I mean, I forget who it is. There's some writer professional I know whose like 8-year-old son loves the Silver Age Legion of Superheroes, just loves it. And that is awesome, but I don't know why. I mean, I know why I love it, because I was there when I was 8 years old, but it got to be the corniest sounding, corniest looking stuff in the world, but he digs it, and that's great. So, everybody has a favorite comic, and it doesn't have to be, last week's whatever.
So I've got a quick question for you. You talk about having a deep bench with JLA and playing with all of the characters of the DC universe, which, there's one or two.
Yeah.
And you talk about, trying to stretch yourself and get better every time. And I think we've talked before about, you were experimenting with Thrill Bent. You're pushing, and I don't know that you get a lot of credit for this, but I really just found it fascinating with Impulse and the pictograms and pushing it's
nothing
in
makes
hindsight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep saying it.
In hindsight, it's like obvious. Well, yeah, of course you can do that, but you did it.
There is nothing that makes me happier than sitting there toiling over a script page and thinking of some new application of the form or some new way of doing things that I've never seen before. Impulse thinking in pictograms like you said, makes perfect sense. And I'm sure there's some anime somewhere where somebody will point to it and said, no, they didn't. But we picked up fresh on that. As far as I know, we created it, and it worked for him. Anything like that, any chance to break the form, any chance to do it without drawing too much attention to itself, but just something that is, perks me up, because I've read 100,000 comics. I need to see new ways of doing stuff. I love reading comics that are, I don't read as many comics as I used to, because at this point you really have to impress me after all that I've read. So the ones that excite me are not necessarily the best stories, or not necessarily the best art, but the ones that excite me are the ones that will do something unusual with the storytelling form that I have not seen before, I haven't thought about for a long time. That's the stuff that really gets my blood flowing.
Well, I know superheroes are science fiction-y.
Yeah.
But do you try to are other genres that you're trying to, merge with superheroes and tell, maybe a noir story, or, look at, I'm not a big crime guy, but,
right.
Romance, or, just bring other elements of those things in.
Sure. For me, mystery is mystery and crime detection and detective stuff is the easiest to meld with. And I like doing that. That's my favorite, my favorite genre of stories outside of comics. But you can, the beauty of comics is you can meld anything with it. With Impulse, as you know, we melded humor with it. That was a humor book, not a superhero book. It's a humor book with some superhero stuff in it. Archie was a joy to write. It wasn't superheroes at all. It was straight up comedy. The only genre that leaves me cold, and this is a personal thing, it's not it's not a condemnation, is anything with dragons in it. No, I'm not interested. Anything with flying dragons, and you've lost me. I can't. Something about mythic, magical fantasy worlds. It's just not what I grew up reading, and I'm sure there's some excellent stuff out there, but you would have to waterboard me to get me to watch Game of Thrones.
Awesome.
Which I know is awesome, but just so that you're not going to see Superman riding on the back of a giant dragon anytime soon.
Will, you were saying crime, and all I could hear, all in the back of my head, I'm just going, he wrote Daredevil. He wrote Daredevil.
Well, but that was a different approach to Daredevil.
True. Yeah. But even if you look at the world's finest book, the Metamorpho arc was a locker room mystery. Started off as a locker room mystery. The one that just came out, the Wonder Woman issue, also a locker room mystery. Those are the kind of genres you can meld in pretty easily into any book with a guy named Batman in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I remember, because we had talked about Roos at one point, and I remember an interview where you are not a fan of Sherlock Holmes.
That's true. I mean, I'm not a fan. I'm not, I don't, but I didn't grow up reading that stuff. I go back and look at it, and I appreciate it for what it is. And I am in awe of the things that Doyle put in place that others have drawn so much from. But the stories themselves just make me want to hang myself. They're just to me, just dull, and there's just nothing there. I'm just not a fan of the stuff. It's great. I'm not a fan. I wish more fans would take that stance. I wish more fans would look at stuff and just go,
it's not for me.
It's not for me. It doesn't. Yeah, This is the thing that makes me nuts. Is not every book it sucks because you don't like it. Yeah. Same as, I mean, you don't watch everything on television either. You watch the things that interest you. It doesn't mean that, this show on Discovery or the History Channel sucks. It just means it's not my interest. And the same applies to comics. Same applies to anything. So, yeah.
All right, Will, I'm going for the pitch. All right. I believe the other thing did they announce, is there going to be a new version of Action Comics Weekly?
Not exactly. First off, no one in their right mind would do a new version of Action Comics Weekly. The way it was back in the day when I was editing on that thing, oh boy, weekly is the right word for it. It was a well-intended, and for those who don't know, it was back in 1988, I want to say 89. The idea was taken up to make Action a double-sized anthology book with a couple of pages of Superman, but also rotating 6-page features in and out of it. And boy, that thing...
Logistical nightmare.
It was a logistical nightmare because it's weekly, and also there's some good stuff in there, but I don't think there's any one issue of Action Comics you can hold up and go cover to cover, this is awesome. So all that said, about a year ago, my World's Finest editor called up and said, listen, we're doing this Action Superman Superstars thing in action with Jason Aaron's going to do one and Gail Simone's going to do one, and I would like you to do one. And we're thinking about making it weekly for your run. So 12 issues weekly. And I came up with a story that I think is big enough to fill those 12 issues and signed on. So I've bet for about a year, I think about it. Yeah, actually a little over a year. I've been working with Clayton Henry doing 12 issues of Action Comics on the side that will finally, I forget which month, November, October, finally unleash. And 12 in a row, 12 issues in a row, 12 weekly issues in a row. Bam, bam, bam.
Wow. How does it? Go ahead.
And after that, I don't know what happened. So you're saying.
I was like, how does it feel like with your comic when you're writing this story and you're passionate about it, and then there's that time period of just waiting for people to experience this? Like, how does that feel? Just that
it honestly doesn't register because I'm writing.
He's on to the next thing.
So I'm writing 6 other things in between now and then. So I get it. I mean, they're the day, but basically here it is. The day before, I'll go look at Comic Book Roundup, which is a review aggregate site. I'll about that the night before, I'll start bookmarking that site and go. I'll check in and just see what people are thinking about World's Finest this week or Absolute Power. And there's a little bit of I hope it works for people. But beyond that, I really am just too in my head and busy just cranking out the next script I couldn't even tell you most of the time what week my book comes out. A lot of times it's just, did that publish this week? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So about how many scripts do you have in various stages? I mean, like if you were going to say pick a month, you're
Jesus.
doing 5, 6, 8 scripts a month?
It feels like it. I mean, like the perfect is 3. Like that's the place you want to be is about 3. One less than you think you can handle. That's always my advice to younger creators who are suddenly getting a bunch of advice or a bunch of assignments is take one less assignment than you think you can handle, because work will expand to fill time. But currently, I mean, World's Finest, Action I'm still not done with yet. Absolute Power I'm done with. But Batman and Robin Year One, which I'm sure we'll get to in a minute.
Oh yeah.
There's that. There's a couple of other things that you don't know about yet. Yeah, I mean, it's seriously, at any given moment, there are 6 scripts in some version, in some form of completion on my desktop. And I'm trying to, and also this doesn't take into account the fact that a lot of artists can't do a monthly book anymore. So, we got to have a fill in, which means I got to think 2 issues ahead and then figure out what that is. And so it's a challenge. I mean, but again, it's a good problem to have. Look, I mean, I get to write comics for a living. I can't complain.
Nice.
Sure.
So for that 12 issues of Action, so did you
Mhm.
guys start way ahead of time, and is
Yeah.
it the same artist or?
Yeah, same artist. I carved out, it's 20 pages each, although Mariko Tamaki's doing a Supergirl backup in all 12, which I don't know anything about except it's going to be awesome because she's awesome.
Yes.
But I'm just 20 pages up front, and I carved out a 5-page subplot for each issue, just so you're not doing 12 issues in a row without any of the supporting characters. Because it is very much a Superman centric on a solo mission main story. So there's not a lot of room in there for Jimmy and Lois and Superboy and Connor and Supergirl and so forth. So, and that is being handled by a different artist. Those 5-page chunks. But Clayton's doing the bulk of it. Clayton's doing at least 15 pages an issue, and he's doing the main story, and it just looks great.
Oh, nice.
Oh, very nice.
Well, there goes our pitch, Will, for resurrecting Kat Matui. Okay.
Yeah, we thought it would be very, karmic to have her come back in a weekly Action Comics, since that's where she was.
She was fridged. Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
The original fridging, yes.
If you go back and look at this is the slapdash nature of Action Comics Weekly. If you go back and look, late in the run, there is an issue that is credited to, I'm going to get this wrong, Avery Williams as the colorist. You've never seen that name before or since, because Avery Williams is me and editor Dan Raspler coloring an entire 8-page story over a lunch period as fast as we possibly can, because the colorist didn't bother to read the script and see that the entire issue is set inside a yellow spaceship. That Green Lantern drink can't do anything. So, but it's seriously, it's like, it's Friday, it's lunchtime. We got to get this thing to press by 4:00. Holy God, what do we do? Tear up the floorboards and start again. It's not just a matter of just slapping yellow on everything. And there's shades of yellow, and there's this, and now we got to change the color of that. It was a madcap race to 8 pages of coloring. So yeah, that's the slapdash nature of Action Comics Weekly near the end.
I always feel like it was a good idea on paper, but maybe it was a little ahead of its time.
Yeah, it is. It's just anthology books just traditionally just don't sell. I mean, people are not looking for anthologies these days, and it's a shame. I mean, because there's a lot of great stuff you can do with an anthology book. I love them, but most fans, they want whoever's name is in the title and whoever's on the cover, and that's what they want. So, shame.
But it's kind of odd that in crowdfunding, anthologies actually do pretty well.
Yeah,
because you have multiple writers, multiple artists, and you're bringing them all together on a particular book,
right.
As well as first issues typically do the worst, and then you build on them versus the direct market where it's first issue big, and so it's really interesting that they're completely different avenues.
I agree.
And
I agree. I watch that stuff carefully and closely, and I'm really amazed at how, as you say, every part of that distribution model is antithetical to the way we do things in comic stores and regular comics companies. And that's great. I don't know how you would find a way to meld the two. I wish you could learn a little bit more from each other, but comic stores have a very specific audience, and crowdfunding has a very different audience.
Absolutely.
I mean, could it just be that a lot of the crowdfunded comics are new characters, but meanwhile, like DC Comics, it's characters that have been around since before we were born, and people have a set in stone, very rigid view. A lot of people have a rigid view of who these characters should be, and
I don't think it's that. I think it is that crowdfunding comics are almost always creator-owned stuff, and that's the number. Those the people who the audience there are the people who are more interested in the creators necessarily than the concept, as opposed to people who will just buy a Batman comic no matter who's writing and drawing it.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a callback to the way art was done in the 1800s. I mean, it was back in the days when you had patrons, funding your art for you, and it's that connection that the audience has to the artist, and there's not a middleman. There's not a not a publishing company in the middle. People have been doing it really well for years. Kiss is famous for the Kiss Army. Kiss in their heyday built up a fandom of hundreds of thousands of complete acolytes who would follow Kiss anywhere, anytime, doing anything. And you do that, and therefore then you build a relationship with that audience where you can always count on them to be there for your albums, for your releases, whatever. And it's very specific because it completely cuts out Sony, or RCA or whoever's in the middle. It is just, and I think audiences like that. I think that audiences and customers respond well to the idea that I know, I love Taylor Swift, for instance, and I know that all my money is going specifically to her rather than going to a middleman or going to Sony or whatever, and then they're going to pay her a piece of that. I want my enthusiasm, my support, I want to go directly to the artist rather than a faceless company. And that's what Kickstarter does really well. And I think there's some way to make that work in more mainstream comics. I don't know quite what it is, but it is a code I'm trying to crack.
Awesome. It's good to hear.
Would you agree with that, Kickstarter creator, Will Allred?
Yes, I would agree with
All right, excellent. Okay.
All right. So you mentioned it. You mentioned the magic word. Yeah. So what can you tell us about Batman and Robin Year One?
Oh my God, it's such a beautiful looking book. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Chris has been wanting to do Batman. Chris Samnee's been wanting to do Batman forever. It's his Superman project, right? It is his, like, as Superman is to me, Batman is to him. He really wanted to do a Batman book. And he was pitching for a long time, but he couldn't find anything that floated DC's boat. And there was an editorial regime change, and an editor who he had a relationship with came in and said, yeah, Chris, just pitch us something. And he wasn't sure what to do. He called me up and asked me if I'd want to do a Batman book with him. Well, yes, of course. I'd do anything with Chris. He's just, he's brilliant. And we talked about it being I said, what do you want to draw? Well, I like drawing Two-Face. Great. We'll put Two-Face in the story. What do you want to draw? Well, I like Dick Grayson as Robin. Great. We'll put Dick Grayson in the story. Just give me a laundry list of what you like, and we'll build a story around that. Okay. And what it ended up becoming, as we talked it out and talked about the fact that when you are able to come in at the way we're coming at it, to actually call it Batman and Robin Year One, suddenly now we have a focus on the book, because it's not just a rando Batman adventure. It's not just, a fifth Batman book this month. It's in continuity, and it is as much a Bruce and Dick story as it is a Batman and Robin story. They, all four of them get equal face time, basically. It takes place 2 or 3 weeks after the accident where Robin's parents died. They've already dealt with Boss Succo, and they've already dealt with, getting vengeance for the Graysons. And now it's the next day, and Bruce has adopted a kid, and now what now? As Alfred is very fond of pointing out to him, you don't know anything about being a parent, and frankly, you don't really know that much about being a child either. So, as Chris puts it, and it was really eloquent, Chris, points out that what's interesting about their relationship, many things, but one of the things that's interesting about their relationship is that having your parents killed and then going out and dressing like a bat and going out to fight crime and punch things, that's how an 8-year-old would deal with a problem.
Yes.
That's very much a child's approach to the problem. And Bruce, for good or ill, and it's not to denigrate, he does great things as Batman. It's awesome that he does that, but it is very much, in a sense, he's frozen in that childlike response. So in that sense, you've got, this guy trying to raise another kid who, from that perspective, is about his age. So they don't mesh well together at all at first. They just don't. They want to, but Batman has a very specific idea of what he wants the job to be, and Dick Grayson is a very strong-willed kid, and Batman doesn't know how to talk to kids, and Dick is getting used to this idea of, I miss my parents. Wait, I'm rich. What? There's so many things about his world that have changed, that the story at heart is really about how do these two completely disparate personalities who have only the one thing in common, which is their parents were murdered. That's all they have in common. How do they end up meshing together as the DC Comics most effective crime fighting team? That's the goal, and that's the 12-issue journey.
Oh, nice.
12 issues, nice.
12 issues, yep, a whole year.
I'm excited even more now that you said that Two-Face is going to be in it. So
yeah,
that's my favorite villain.
There's several villains in it. I don't want to spoil anything.
That's cool.
And there's also, it's not like a big giant rogues gallery of like, oh, let's put the Joker and Penguin and Catwoman and Ra's al Ghul. That was one of the things we talked about. Is, hey, Chris, do you have any villains you want to draw? But as Chris puts it, the story as it shook out really didn't go that way. So hopefully there'll be room for appearances by some of the other villains, but it's not, and if we can work that in organically, there will be, but it's not going to, climax in a story with Batman and Robin versus, 18 Batman supervillains.
Good. I like that.
Nice.
So we're going to be getting 12 monthly issues of Batman and Robin year one, and then 12 weekly issues of Action Comics. So
that's 24 Mark Waid comics just right there. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you're going to be sick of me, and by the end of
Oh no, we're not sick of no. I don't think anyone's sick of you. It seems like DC is not sick of you, man. Every other day it seems like, oh yeah, Mark Waid's doing this too.
My editors are awesome. My editors, every other call I get from my editors is, you just make sure you're doing okay. You're doing okay, right? Like, look, I'm doing fine, but I appreciate the concern. But it's not your job to worry about my schedule. It's my job to worry about my schedule. So I appreciate I appreciate the compassion. That's above and beyond the call. Like, I took the job. I gotta meet the deadline, but they'll work with me. There are times, personal stuff gets in the way, or, here comes COVID or whatever, where it becomes, what can we do to figure out something here? How can we, there's one project that has been pushed back a couple of months already that you don't know about yet. But it's because, it's a lot of work to do Absolute Power and all this other stuff at the same time. But they're again, the editorial team at DC is just great about it. No complaints about how they treat me, just nothing but compliments about how they treat me like a Fabergé egg. I'd really appreciate it.
I'm trying to remember.
So you've worked with lots of superstars, artists.
Yep.
Are there any artists that you've not had a chance to work with that you would just? Yeah, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. I'm trying to think. You'd think I would come prepared for this question because it gets asked a lot. I've been very, very lucky, and Jose Garcia Lopez obviously was high on my wish list, and managed to tick that box a couple of years ago with the Wonder Woman 80th anniversary special. And it just, beautiful work. I've been really lucky. I know there are people, no one comes immediately to mind. I'm sure 6 people will come to mind the moment I get off the call, but I more often than not, what happens is somebody will come to me and say, "Hey, look at this Dan Mora guy. We want to put you with Dan Mora." And I will say, "I don't really know Dan's," and I didn't really know Dan's work. I mean, I'd seen it, but I not really studied it. And once I get it, I'm like, "Oh my God, this guy's a genius." Same with Emma Lupacino. I didn't really know Emma's work, but holy smokes. I mean, my editors seem to be very good about knowing who to pair me up with and who's going to be well served by my story or vice versa.
Awesome.
Awesome.
After World's Finest and everything, like just falling in love with Dan's art, I went and bought his I had read it before. I went and bought his Klaus book.
Yeah, well,
year.
that's also Grant Morrison, the best writer in comics. Come on,
but I loved his art, like just because that imagery, because I went through a whole like history with my kids on like the Santa stories and stuff.
Yeah,
so I was like, let's pull this out, kids.
Cool.
Anything to get back them into comics.
All right. Anything else you're working on, Mark? I mean, we still have a whole other hand of fingers that we can list stuff off on.
I'm trying to think what we can talk about. There's
that's the key.
You can't talk about.
1, 2, 3. There's a bunch of stuff. It seems like there's something else that we've. One of the things that is out there in the void that will eventually be printed. Eventually, is about 4 years ago. Longer, maybe, it's all a blur. Simon & Schuster came to me and Marvel Comics and said, we want to do an update of Stan's famous How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, but we want it to be all inclusive, and we want it to be how to create comics the Marvel Way, for everything from writing to art to coloring to lettering. And I was the guy they tapped to do it because I've done everything at some point or another, and was eager to dive in. So I turned in that manuscript a couple of years ago. And it covers everything. Like, just, if you don't know anything about creating comics, but you've got an idea for a story, we can walk you through all the processes of lettering, of coloring, of inking. It's not super hyper in depth. It's a survey course, but it is, and it points you to places where you can go for more information, but the basics, the fundamentals are there. That's awesome. Mike Hawthorne is doing the artwork portion of it. I've done all the. What I did was, I wrote everything I knew about all of these things, and then I contacted my friends in those specific fields. Hey, Carl Kiesel, can you look at the inking chapter? Hey, can you look at the lettering chapter, Troy Petrie? Can you, and make sure that I'm right, make sure that I've got everything where, and I got some feedback from them, which is great, but I didn't want to just presume that I knew how to do all this stuff without getting some advice. The other thing that's fascinating about it, though, because again, it's just with COVID, it just fell off the map, and you can go on Amazon, you can Google it. Or not Google. You can go on Amazon and search for it. I think the publishing date is like 2099 at this point. But someday, I mean, they put too much energy and money into this book now not to publish it. So someday, hopefully, sometime next year, How to Create Comics the Marvel Way.
You heard it here. He's writing the Marvel 2099 books, right?
That's exactly. That's what. Yeah, that's the takeaway. Yeah. So I really want that thing to come out. I really want that thing to do well. I've also had to. The advantage of it taking that long. The only advantage of taking that long is that technology has changed by leaps and bounds just in the 4 years since I turned in the original manuscript. So at least I have the opportunity to go in, update, clean up. I mean, in terms of art, Clip Studio didn't exist. When I wrote this thing, it was all Adobe Photoshop. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. The tools have modified. There's different tools out there, but the basics are still there. So,
do you get into how you approach a page, and as far as panel counts and beats and things like that?
Oh yeah, very much so. That's
awesome.
Obviously probably the chapter I know most about is the writing part of it, and it's really how to create a story, how to create a comic book story, the things to do, the things not to do, the things to watch out for, and then same with the art. Here's what perspective is. Here's how to draw hands. Here's how to make shapes. Here's how to here's how to draw clothes. Here's how to draw bricks. Here's why backgrounds are important. Inking, same thing there. Lettering, same thing there. Here's the things that you do and don't do. None of these disciplines, especially when you get to inking and coloring, are nearly as simple as as people think they are, as I'm sure, Will, you can attest to.
Yeah. Well, and one
So
of the things that I've really heard is that more than anything else, bad lettering on a comic will make it look absolutely amateur hour, no matter what the underlying art
no
is.
matter what the art is, people hand me stuff all the time at conventions, and if that lettering is awful, if that lettering is Comic Sans, first off, Comic Sans is like wearing a swimsuit to a wedding. Comic Sans is awful, but even still, even if it's just shoddy, badly done lettering, it's like listening to a great song on an AM radio with crackling and static. That's what it's like, right? The underlying song might be awesome, but the delivery is so awful that I can't get through it. And the same with lettering. People do not understand how valuable, up and coming creators don't understand how valuable good lettering is. And my first advice is don't learn it yourself. My first advice is go find somebody who can do it and pay them the damn money. It's worth it. But if not, if your budget's strained, and you can't do it, there are tutorials online. There's ways of doing it. It probably won't look as sharp. It's not going to look as sharp as Nate Picos, or it's not going to look as sharp as Troy or any
Dave
of these.
Sharp.
Right, exactly. It's not going to look that good. But yeah, I wish more up and coming creators knew that. Nothing makes me want to fling a comic across the room faster than, oh, what a great looking cover, interesting looking art, and I open it up and the lettering is just super amateur stuff, templates, and every pointer is just weird straight lines, and it's just, what I'm talking about. It just looks ugly.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
I have a quick question here.
Yeah.
As the world's biggest Superman fan, Mr. Wade, have you watched My Adventures with Superman? And if so, what did you think of it?
I love it. I really love it. The Mark Waid of 30 years ago would not have loved it because the continuity. Why they know the secret identity? This is crazy. Continuity. I've come around. Every Superman everybody has their favorite Superman. Everybody has their different idea of what Superman is. And as long as it's done with hope, as long as it's done with optimism, I don't care what your take is. I mean, I think that's still Superman. It's not the Superman that we are familiar with in a lot of ways, but it's still Superman. And there's a lot of wiggle room there with the supporting characters, but he's got to be Superman. And I think they capture that really well. Josie Campbell and her crew, and I got to talk to her about this at San Diego this year. I really am impressed with this and love that series.
That actually became a series that we would watch every Sunday for breakfast, and my kids were
I bet
more excited about it than I was at times, because they would be up like New Adventures of Superman today.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I got to see them love the characters that I love.
That's awesome.
In a whole new light.
What a gift.
Yeah, I mean, it truly was. And like, I've been praising for a while, and this is why I like a lot of your books right now, is there's now starting to be stuff to pass down to the next generation.
Yeah.
Like, like I was talking about earlier with the captain and stuff my son can read, that can get invested in, so that these characters that we love aren't stopping here.
Right.
There's something to mine the next generation with. And I love that show for that ability that it has. So.
And it also just goes to the issue, as does Batman Caped Crusader, as did a lot of other things, that
that's good one. Yeah.
That it doesn't have to be super dark and grim and gritty and adult. It doesn't have to be that. You can write something that is all ages. Actually, I think there's some cursing in Batman Caped Crusader, which could set some people off. But My Adventures of Superman is a good example of just, that's for all ages. And it doesn't mean it's dumb, doesn't mean it's childish, doesn't mean it's simple, but it just, I think that's my wheelhouse. That's my lane, is writing superhero stuff that is by and large all ages and appropriate for, a 50-year-old fan or some kid in a Halloween costume who shows up at your front door. Hopefully at Halloween.
So yeah, once he mentioned My Adventures of Superman, I'm like, oh, now I have to ask about Batman Cape Crusader. If you got the opportunity, because I know they're brought in a few different writers, would you be any interest in writing an episode of Batman Cape Crusader?
Maybe. There was a soft ask, actually.
Oh.
Not an official one,
Yeah.
but a soft, let's say, inquiry. And my schedule was too full at the time. I don't know how good a job I would do, because I don't know that is. I think it's an awesome take on Batman, but it's not my take on Batman. You know. And also, I mean, look at the Murderers Row people they got. They got Greg Rucka. They got Ed Brubaker. I know some of the writers for the second season are coming up, and they're terrific. And just let them do their thing. Also, on top of this, I would also mention that because I've been courted to write, cartoon stuff in the past. Here's why I like comics. I write it, I give it to an artist, it comes out, it's the story I told. In any other medium, you are at the mercy of a million executives and a million story editors and a million collaborators, and that's fine and that's awesome. I've been in cartoon rooms and animation rooms, and that's great, but it's never going to be the story that you set out to tell all yours. You're always lucky if like 70% of it is yours, and that's fine, but I can't work in that environment. I just don't. I like the fact that comics is 100% the story I'm trying to tell you.
Well, and comics there's a more immediacy to comics because 3 months later, 3 months later, it exists. But with the animation or something, it's what, a year or more?
It's a long time. One of my good friends out here is doing second season Cape Crusader stuff, and we were talking about it like 8 months ago, right? So when the thing came on this season, I kept looking for his name in the credits, and I got to the end. I'm like, well, I know you did some, and he said, yeah, for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, again, we've been talking about it 8 months before that, and he'd been working before that. So yeah, on the other hand, I write an issue of World's Finest. It's in your hands in about 3 months. So
Nice.
Anyway, gentlemen, I need to start wrapping up on my end, but any other outstanding questions? Any last little bits of lingering business here?
No, I think
nothing
we're good.
pressing. We could keep talking forever, but
yeah.
Gotta respect your time.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to promote before you pop out?
I think we promoted everything there is. I mean,
so anything on your personal end, social media, anything, or?
I'm Mark Waid writer on Instagram. I am on Blue Sky as Mark Waid. If you're over 70, I'm on Facebook. That's about as far as I can stretch at this point, because otherwise I am obsessive compulsive enough where I will just spend all day on social media. And that is not a good thing for any writer to do. There's that. I'll be doing a couple of conventions. I'll be doing Baltimore this year in a few weeks. I'll be doing Sioux City after that at the end of September. And there are a couple more coming up. I'm doing a lot of conventions these days. I did a lot this past year, and I just enjoy it because it's just, a free vacation for me, if my fiance, to go see some part of the country or some part of the world we've not seen. So I'm down with that. So keep your eyes open if you want to see me locally somewhere. There's a good chance I'm going to be somewhere within 500 miles of your house somewhere in the next couple of years.
Any upcoming cons that you'll actually be at that you can stay?
That's the Baltimore one. I mean, that's the ones I mentioned, Baltimore and Sioux City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fiance, congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, we're not in any rush. It's not in any, actually it's not in any rush. We're just like, we're indoor cats, both of us. We're like I've lived alone most of my life. She's lived alone most of her life. We live 4 blocks apart. That's awesome. That's like, we're both like, can we find a duplex? That's the best solution for us. So, but yeah, I got, I'm got everything going now. I got a beautiful, lovely, terrific fiance. I've got a career I want. I'm working at DC Comics, doing whatever I want. It's, I'm just going to enjoy the ride. Like I said earlier, I'm just going to enjoy the ride as long as I can.
Awesome.
Nice.
Beautiful life.
All good.
Cut. No.
I'm gonna say that'd be
Yeah.
and that's how you end your podcast, Phil. It's just like
I know. Yep.
What happened to Mark Waid? All right. Yes. Thank you.
tune in next time.
Thank you,
bet.
sir.
Over and out.
Yes.
You bet.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right, bye.
Always a good time.
Always good
I
information.
always feel so bad because half these people anymore, they do like 20 minutes. Because like when I just talked to Erica Schultz last week, because like she even said, she's like, my sweet spot is like 3 to 4 books a month. She's like, right now I'm doing 7.
Wow.
And one of them she writes and like I think she's doing the lettering. So it's like, I'm like, what?
Yeah, she's on Kickstarter. She
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because she's got a
What
bunch
was
of
it? It
Marvel
was a-
stuff. She has a bunch of Marvel stuff. She has at least one thing in Image. Yeah, and she has like some creator and stuff. Yeah, it's
Like I mean, I had questions I was going to ask him, like about more a little bit about the All In initiative and like all that. But I was looking at the time, like,
I
man,
know. I was like,
I feel that opens up a lot more, and I'm like, you know what, he's busy, and it's it's nice to respect people's time.
mhm.
mhm. Yep, absolutely.
I think we hit a lot of good topics there. So
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and no Katma, but that's
yeah,
okay.
I know, but it's like
Keep trying.
It's not like a true Action Comics Weekly, with like multiple. It's basically it's a Superman story. So
Yeah.
which I kind of like better because with that original Action Comics Weekly, Superman was in 2 pages each issue.
I think so. Yeah.
I love. He's like, yeah, what year was that? 88, 89. I'm like, I was like, yeah, 88. I'm thinking, look at me. I'm telling Mark Waid when he did his. I'm like, shut up. All right. Let's do some plugs. Get out of here. All right. So yes, we're gonna plug ourselves. Yes, if you had thoughts, questions about this interview, hey, if you do comics, we want to talk to you. Email capesandlunatics@gmail.com or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. You can help support us on our Patreon, patreon.com/capesandlunatics. And you can find episodes, social media, all the merchandise, all the good stuff at tubespace.io/capesandlunatics podcast networks. That's tubespace.io/capesandlunatics podcast network. All right. And Tyler, where can they hear you talk Superman besides Electric Mullet?
On the Electric Mullet. I'll be back next month after taking this month off.
Nice.
You can find me at Krypton Report, where I'm over there with Mr. James Cole when he's not fighting crime. We are talking Superman and all things DC.
The walking Chuck Norris meme, Mr. James Cole.
Yes. I definitely help boost his ego when he's down with randomness.
Nice. All right, and as we said, yes, Mr. Kickstarter. Will tell people about your
Crossover Division. You can find me at Walred. That's at WALLRED at Facebook and Twitter and Blue Sky and other places that I don't remember at this point. But if you'd like to check out Crossover Division number 5 has been sent out to all the backers. So we will be launching Crossover Division 6 next month. It'll be sometime in September. And then you can also check out an older book I wrote called Diary of Night at diaryofnight.com. And, there's a character that I do a podcast for, but I can't remember what character that is.
Oh yeah, that maniac you love, yeah.
I of course love
Yeah.
Hot.
That's the one, yeah. So Phil and I do a great little podcast on Green Lantern every week, which is kind of fun, called Sector 2814.
Over on Cape Lunatic Sidekicks, kids. Comes on the day after Electric Mullet. So here you go, kids. You're welcome.
Back to back,
Yes. Electric Mullet twice a month, and then when that's not on, Nightwing News is on, and that's why. Yes. So I almost forgot about Batman and Robin Year One. I was like, oh, thank God he said that. Kristen would be all mad if I wasn't like, tell me your plans for Dick Grayson. All right.
Batman and Robin Year One.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So yeah. All right. I'm not doing it next. All right. All right, kids. So yes. Thank you, Mr. Mark Waid. And anyone wants to speak to us, email us, call us. All right. Thank you, everyone, and good night.